Alright, time for another DraftPhysics.com, DebatePhysics.com also. But limited debate possible with the rulers of science. Anyway, yeah, I guess we'll read a little bit more of what I wrote in attempting to explain, you try to explain one subject and how they're wrong on it, but you really do need the context of all the other errors because together they are, they create a whole monstrosity, and you really do have to take it apart as the fact that it all does have to fit together. It's one universe, and well, I say so. And it obeys one set of rules, and so you really have to have all those elemental rules right, or it really isn't much point in doing science, frankly. I mean, little errors can be really big errors, which I would argue mv squared is, because it creates all these fake, uh, you know, formulaic descriptions of how much energy all of these subatomic particles have. And anyway, so yeah, so I guess we'll do that reading part, just showing the simulation doing its thing, which just sort of, it compels me to say, well, maybe I'll do a little bit of, I haven't gotten to the chemistry part yet, and but it's, part of the game is recognizing that these are the formations of nucleuses. And you start with hydrogen and you end up with something like, well, this is almost the constituents. If you thought of the green things as protons instead of electrons, that this is almost, it's one electron too much. But anyway, of building a helium nucleus. So the argument would be the hydrogen is really a neutron, when they're right next to each other, it's a neutron. When there's some separation between the two, it's a hydrogen atom. It's really makes that much sense in the sense that when it's compressed, it's a neutron. When it's not, it's a hydrogen atom. And you're building the helium out of that, but it's not just, it's like 4 hydrogens, not just one. But that makes sense because they have all kinds of different molecular hydrogen, which means more than one molecule sticking to each other, which means, it's 2 hydrogen atoms, 3 hydrogen atoms, and then when you finally get to 4 hydrogen atoms, you end up making helium. But anyway, I guess I can just draw a little bit of that. It's because it is, like I said, I haven't really explored the subject very deeply, but there is all kinds of indication that this will not only explain drag, because helium nucleuses are resistant to cosmic drag. Electrons and protons, you can't throw them across space, but you can throw a helium nucleus. And so the idea would be, is the helium nucleus would be something like this. Interesting kind of arrangement. See, this part you could understand, right? This makes sense, okay? The attraction to the 2 electrons, the repulsion of the proton. So there's a balance here for both the electron and the proton. Then you can say, well, I could add 2 more protons out here, and that would be the helium. So you could just say this is a neutron, and you could say this is a neutron, here's your 2 extra protons. And the trick would be is in combining helium, because you just need to put another electron here and you can complete that picture. But the 2 electrons, I think, okay, that are part of helium, okay, so if this would be the nucleus and then you add 2 electrons to make helium, so ignore this one, pretend I didn't draw him, and so that's what you would have as a helium. And then obviously you could combine heliums, and they'd stick to each other anyway. So anyway, it's just interesting. And then the idea would be is that the flex, how much this thing flexes based on going in a direction, would control how much pressure it could apply, because obviously the force felt by the front of it won't be the same as the force felt by the back of it. And so the back will keep pushing while the front is bludgeoned by the universe. And that's how it overcomes the drag problem. Anyway, that's my speculation, and I don't hate it. I don't know if there was something else I did want to, I mean, I've already mentioned the fact that, their gravity theory is just so bad, and, I didn't even think of the fact that, it is a free energy. Basically the Earth is making free energy in a sense because, the Earth is causing momentum in objects, so it's giving momentum to things. Bent space is creating momentum, and the fact is that momentum is going to be turned into heat as the thing that leaves. So something magical created the momentum, and the momentum is going to leave as radiant heat. And you didn't use radiant heat to create the momentum, so there's no circle here, there's no cycle. You're not taking the energy and moving it from large objects to small objects and then back, and it's not circular, it's not conservational. You're creating essentially new energy every time the Earth pushes something into the Earth. And that's why it takes energy to knock something off of the Earth, is because you lost the energy that you used going in. You don't have it anymore, technically, and now it's going to take real extra energy to pull something off of the Earth. All right, so that's enough of that. Oh, the thing I was supposed to mention, I have decided to, if I respond to the trolls, that's what they really are, the experimental trolls, it will be on a video on the website. So I have, there'll be two versions of the video, an MP4 and a W, whatever it is. And, so whatever's compliant with your device. And so I'll put those in the description. And it's just one location. So if that video is not going to be permanent, and I'll just keep putting the new video on top of where the old video was. So if you just reference that video, then you can see whatever my most current deciding to waste my time arguing with morons, and that'll all be all it is. So I did respond to an Ian Gosling video, and so that is at those locations. And yeah, so that way I won't be wasting time on these morons. Not as much anyway. And certainly won't be wasting my channel on them. Alright, so I think now we'll just jump ahead to the writing. Should be back. Alright, so I don't know whether this paragraph was written before I finished the last time I did this kind of a video, but anyway, this is where I'm explaining just the idea that force just comes in two forms. There's force freely flying in the universe, and there's force that's pushing a piece of an electron or proton, and that's where all the energy is. So there's a certain amount of this little stuff called a force bit, a piece of quanta, energy quanta, as Einstein might say, and it either is stuck to a piece of matter at this moment, moving something, material, or it's freely flying and creating things like photons and magnetism. Alright, so summarizing this description relevant to thermodynamics, which was my original intention, was to point out how their theory of thermodynamics is fundamentally flawed because all the energy is cycling. You can't get rid of it. The second law proposes that energy, or more precisely momentum, fades into forms no longer capable of being cycled through the two states of energy, pushing a matter bit or not pushing a matter bit. I would counter-argue that a now freely flying bit of force, so some piece of photon in the universe, cannot escape the destiny of one day colliding with a bit of matter. And similarly, every bit of energy currently pushing an electron or proton, every bit of force trapped inside of my molecular structure, will someday be freed. The things will exchange the force bits, and it's inevitably going to be back to being a piece of radiation. The universe has no usefulness bias, so that's what this is all about, really. Again, is another human-centric perversion of reality, where they pretend because the energy isn't terribly useful to a human being, it therefore is dead and will never be revived. It creates and contains no waste momentum, so, or wasted, I could put there, but now I ain't worried about that difference. The simple truth is, if somebody wants to rewrite what I write, or write it for me, or do something like that, and we're able, or if they wish to submit this once it's a little deeper as a paper, yes, I'm willing. You can sign the paper as a co-author. So, I don't mind sharing the fame. Yeah. Because I really hate this writing process, but whatever, gotta do it. Alright, a little difference that makes all the difference: charge. So this is really the universal first force, the first interaction, the first mechanism, and everything else, gravity, magnetism, electricity, everything else, is just a consequence of that function. So what was shown in the simulation, the things that are binding atoms together, that's the same force that binds the universe together. What has been previously described as a simple push universe, active bits of energy give motion to intrinsically inactive bits of matter. So the matter is dead, and the force pushes it around, and through that mechanism, matter acts as a catalyst, essentially, and allows force to interact with force, especially the electron force to interact with the proton force. Adding a small bit of nuance to that mechanism will provide the grounding for all the more complex functions observed in the universe. It is well established that electrons and protons have opposite character. They have some feature that enables them to see each other differently and to be forced to react differently. So the thing to understand is the force pushes the matter. The matter doesn't move by itself. It doesn't move by some power it has. It is pushed. It is forced to move. Their behavior can be perfectly modeled adding the same feature to the bits of force. So by making the force, just like the matter, two elemental types, and just call them electron force and proton force. By imagining the force to similarly have two forms, of electron active force and proton active force, so just kind of trying to emphasize that the two forces only push one type of object. Interactions between force and matter can be made slightly different but significantly more complex. With two kinds of force and two kinds of matter, a third interaction can be added to the two regular possibilities of absorption and reflection. This simple third interaction would be a conversion of force type, i.e., if an electron force hits a proton, it is converted into a proton bit, I should say proton force bit, upon exiting, and vice versa. This third interaction gives electrons and protons their function of charge. Perfectly consistent with Maxwell's drawings of charge, the electron will only radiate electron force, and the proton will only radiate proton force. Being that proton force is inert to electrons and electron force is inert to protons, no pushing pressure will be created between electrons and protons. In the contrary circumstance, where two matter bits of the same type interact, both will be radiating strong pushing force, tending to drive them in opposite directions. Alright, so then I provide a simple definition of these types of action. Alright, simple outline of possible interactions. Absorption. When a force bit hits a matter bit of the same type, if the matter bit has no velocity or has some portion of its velocity in the same direction, so if it's vector, so to say the force bit's going this way, the matter bit has a vector in any one of that 180 degrees, then it would add to its velocity. Or has some portion of its velocity in the same direction that the force bit is moving, the force bit sticks and adds its momentum to the matter bit. Simple enough. Reflection. If a force bit hits a matter bit of the same type and the matter bit has some element of velocity in the opposing direction, so now the force bit's going this way and the matter bit's going in some vector opposing that, in the 100 degrees opposing that, then, okay, opposing direction, the force bit is reflected back on its path, so the force bit just bounces, okay, and a bit of force previously captured, obviously it had to have previously captured if it has momentum, the matter bit, and so it loses a piece of energy it previously captured. So this is like force hitting force, and they both just reflect. Okay. And a force bit previously captured by the matter bit is released in the opposite direction. Okay, simple enough rule. Conversion. If a force bit hits a matter bit of the opposite type, the force bit merely passes through the matter bit without sharing momentum, and the force bit will have its type changed to that of the matter bit. So if red goes into a green, it comes out green. If green goes into a red, it comes out red. These three interactions will cause electrons to repel electrons, protons to repel protons, and electrons and protons to attract. All right, so that seems pretty clear. All right, so we'll just put that back up for a bit and point out that, physics has no explanation for the function of charge. It just magically, the electrons magically don't like electrons, the protons magically don't like protons, and they magically are able to attract to each other. And again, this simple formula of just having two types of force to match the two types of matter and just inverting their relationship perfectly solves the problem. And let's understand that if I did create this simple relationship of a proton, and an electron, you could understand that, yes, they'll tend to stick to each other, and that if I instantly knock this out, that the two protons would see each other, they would be creating a lot of pressure against each other's existence and push each other away. So that's basically the strong force. So another thing where they created a whole magical force, a new mechanism that creates this relationship of, proton, electron, proton. That whole theory, all right, where they create this new kind of energy, something separate. So again, just understand they have them all separate. They have gravity has its own force mechanism. Electricity and magnetism, and it has its own force mechanism. And then the strong force is invented, having its own force mechanism. And no, it's all created by the same universe. The same mechanism creates all these phenomena. And it starts right here. And that's it. Charge is the first. And the manifestation of its going through its routine is going to be the fact that you're going to create gravity, because every time these things stick to each other, it's because they were pushed into each other, which means some force had to spend time pushing matter. And while it was pushing matter, it wasn't pushing something else. If it's pushing this thing over here, it can't be pushing this thing over here, which is what it would have been pushing if that thing wasn't in the way. So you can just get the idea that it's going to create changes in the field strength based on what the force is doing before it gets somewhere. Alright, that's probably enough of a video. So, until the next time and such, there has been no comments lately, which is fine, because they were always crap. But it is a little bit unusual. I guess the trolls have finally given up on making sock accounts, which is fine. So anyway, till the next time and such and so forth and whatnot. there still is going to be a debate. Like I said, the guy scheduled me for 10 years from now. It's really not going to be 10 years from now. I'm not going to disclose the date or the person because the people who wish to prevent there to being a debate will just get in the way. So I won't bother with any of that. But it should be relatively soon. Within a couple of weeks, that kind of thing. Okay, so till the next time and such.